All right, so we're about 1 minute past, so we'll get going. If that's all right with you guys. Peter, Larson, you're good with that? Ready to roll here?
Let's go.
Cool. Just before we get started, go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Mitch Belsley, and I'm the head of customer success at Demoflow. And so for those of you that don't know about Demoflow, we'll introduce you sometime throughout the webinar today. But it's nice to virtually meet all of you. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We will be recording, so don't worry, you can put the pen and paper aside if you're worrying about frantically taking notes. We will be sending the recording over once it's compiled afterwards, I believe along with this deck as well. So feel free to give full and undivided attention. Peter does have his notes over there. Also, I see, Timothy, you've already actually asked a couple questions in here, but please use the Q&A option down at the bottom of your Zoom window. Feel free to start stacking up questions, and I'll be taking a look throughout while Peter and Larson are presenting, and we'll make sure to spend some time at the end to answer questions and then follow up for those that we weren't able to answer on the call. Also, lastly, as many of you have already seen, the chat feature will also be available throughout, and there may be some times where we'll be using it throughout the webinar today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our co-panelists here. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce Larson Stair. He's CEO and co-founder of Demoflow. You know, I've known Larson for some time now, and this is a guy who has extensive experience being in the trenches selling SaaS, and set out, I think, a couple of years ago, almost a couple of years ago, on a mission to really kind of innovate the way that sales teams collaborate and present together, which is what we're talking about today. And I can tell you, being a colleague and a good friend, that he is definitely a charismatic leader. He's got smiles for miles, the diviner of demos, Larson Stair, and you'll be hearing from him later on today. So I just want to introduce Larson. And then next up, just seems like always a familiar face, but Peter has a plethora of experience in software sales. He's a best-selling author. He has just a career helping software and companies improve their sales and marketing results. I call him the Wizard of the West Coast, really the soothsayer of sales, if you will. And so I'd like to introduce the founder of The Second Derivative and author of Great Demo, Peter Cohan, and I will actually yield my responsibility over to you to take it away and get us rolling here.
Soothe, soothe, soothe. So I'm a soothsayer, apparently. Okay. All right. Let us see if we can make this work. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can, let's see now. I want to see if I can get the, one moment. I want to move my dashboard around and see if I can get the chat window open. Actually, what I'm going to ask you to do, Mitch, is, because I have limited screen real estate, is occasionally read some of the chat comments to me. That'll keep us engaged as well. So just to make sure everything is working, can you all see a PowerPoint slide that says, Demos is a team sport? Please give us a yes, no, or I can't read. And the answers are, Mitch?
Yes,
All right,
yes, coming in.
And I'm assuming that since that's happened, you can also hear my voice. You do not have to answer that. So, ladies and gentlemen, curiosity question. This number on the screen, what do you think it refers to? Anyone? What are they typing in the chat dialog box?
Let's see.
Nothing just yet.
Any guesses? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with a success versus standard. Anybody come up with anything yet?
Says,
Increase sales when multiples are involved in presenting, when multiple people are involved with presenting.
Ding, 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 ding. Exactly correct. So this is a study, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, the fine folks at Gong put together. 250%, that's 2.5 times more likely that you're going to close this project when you have a team as opposed to flying solo. That to me was not intuitively obvious, and it was really interesting to see this study done. And that's what this is all about, is how do we improve our success rates when we are operating as a team. So here's the traditional approach, and I think somebody already noted that they refer to themselves as a demo monkey. I can't believe I still hear this term from time to time. The first time I heard it was about 15 years ago in Australia. I was doing a great demo workshop for a team in Sydney, and we were doing role play exercises, and the sales guy starts off the demo by saying literally, and here's, whatever his name was, Alex, my demo monkey, and my jaw went clatter, clatter, clatter. But this is not what I would consider a best practice. But wait, there's more. How many of you who are on the pre-sale side of the house have ever looked like this when you've been asked to do a demo and you have no discovery information? Go ahead and type it into your chat dialog box. Anybody, if you have ever enjoyed this, type monkey or oh no or something similar. Okay.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of yeses.
All right. So my portion of this is pretty simple. I'm going to make some suggestions about what not to do, and then going to offer some best practices on what to do. So let's dive into the lovely land of nope. So these are things we want to try to avoid when we're enjoying demos as a team sport. So number one, well, this is, by the way, a very rare color photo of Ben Franklin. Number one, if you don't prepare, you're basically, as Ben says, preparing to fail. So preparation is a huge part of this whole process. The vendors that I see over and over and over get together, join 5 minutes before the call and say, so let's dive in, and have done no preparation. They are truly preparing to fail. So here's a few other things. How many of you have ever looked at the beginning of a corporate overview presentation to the bottom left of the PowerPoint deck and shock and horror seen something like this? If you've seen this, say, oh no, in the chat dialog box, because the answer, of course, is no corporate overview presentations. If we have time, I can offer a suggestion for a fabulously abbreviated corporate overview presentation. Number two, similar, what about product overview presentations? By the way, this is a real number. I saw this just in December last month. Somebody actually started a presentation. Their deck had 141 slides. Okay, same principle. The demo is not all about you. It's all about whom? It's all about the prospect. It's all about the customer. So next thing, this is probably one of the worst things to contemplate. Curiosity question, are we seeing the screen right now? Right now it's still filling on my side.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. No discovery. So actually what I'm going to do is advance these, and Mitch, what I'd like you to do is we're going to do a little bit of team here. Larson, you do doing discovery is like the first line, and then Mitch, you do the second. So go ahead.
Doing discovery is like presenting a demo without performing sufficient discovery. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. And then Mitch is doing the second portion right here?
That's correct. That's correct. So Mitch, go ahead and read the second part.
A doctor prescribing before doing diagnosis. It's malpractice.
There, you got some malpractice. Okay, next one.
So presenting a demo before performing sufficient discovery is like
A surgeon cutting random openings before doing diagnosis. It's worse.
nice.
How about this one here? Actually, you can just read the, Mitch, just read the punchline here. Pardon the bad pun.
Punching haphazard holes in drywall to try and find a stud. It's clueless.
By the way, anybody in the audience ever done this? I hope not. You don't even answer in chat dialog because you don't want to admit it if you. Oh, great, Larson. Good to hear that. But this next one, and by the way, the quiz question will be, where is this photo from? This still shot from? So go ahead, Mitch.
A restaurant waiter serving you every dish to see what you like. Fattening and potentially expensive.
And did anybody come up with the right answer in the chat dialog box?
Looks like Monty Python.
The meaning
There
of
you
life.
go.
Yep.
There it is. That's right. Well done. And last but not least,
a contractor pouring a cement foundation and then asking if you want plumbing or electrical connections. It sounds really expensive.
It's extraordinarily expensive. Sadly, far too many demos are done this way today. So the moral of the story is very, very clear. This is on the don'ts list, but the do list is do discovery. And I want to offer a comment about this. I hear a lot of organizations say, we're going to do discovery on the floor. There's a number of problems with this. Go ahead and, if you will, type it into your chat dialog box. But fundamentally, doing discovery on the fly forces you to stay, if you will, with the airplane or your software. So that you lose the ability, most typically, to broaden your discovery, to get away from the desire to click one of these and advance your software. So the guidance is do real discovery before you do a demo, and we'll talk about how to solve the problem of, well, what if the customer really needs to see something? So we'll get to that in a moment or two. How many of you have ever been doing a demo and things are going delightfully down the desired pathway when questions dragged you into the weeds? If this has ever happened, type weeds or just weed, because I'm in Humboldt County in Northern California, your choice, in the chat dialog box. How many people are saying this?
Pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
Okay,
Weeds for miles.
everybody.
We got a weeds for miles.
There you go. I like that. Clever. This is an interesting one. This is a little bit of sadly a football analogy, but how many of you have ever watched a demo or been on the receiving end of a demo or participated in a demo where there was piling on? Now, piling on, here, we're going to demonstrate this. So what's going to happen is I'm going to describe what piling on is, then Larson's going to add to it, then Mitch is going to add to that, and then I will clarify once again, and then Larson will add additional clarification. That's called piling on. That's what piling on is. And we want to try avoid that as well. By the way, curiosity question for the audience, how many people have ever suffered through that? Let's see our yeses, or you could type piling on, yes. Tackled,
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Fullback, that's cute. As we move from the bad to the good, I want to reference three numbers here. The two are in red, the 90 and the 59. Any guesses as to what these two numbers are and refer to? And then the last one, 76, is in green. Any guesses as to what those are? What do we have in chat?
Talking.
Yeah,
Larson, you may be muted.
Yeah, talking engagement, time doing the demo.
You're very close. So it's 90 minutes is the current record for me watching somebody present without ever asking for feedback. 90 minutes. Think about that. It was an hour and a half of pure demo, never once checking in to see, was I following along? Did it resonate? Anything like that? 59 minutes, which I thought was breathtaking in its own right. That was the previous record. Now let's compare that with the green number, 76 seconds. Nobody guessed what this is or knows what it is? Is that correct, Mitch? 76 seconds is the average time, according to the Gong study of a few years ago in a demo, the average time where you want to have a speaker switch between the vendor talking and the customer asking a question or responding. 76 seconds. So every minute and a quarter, on average, you need to have a change-up in your demo. All right, let's talk about things we should be doing and a little bit of clarification on this. So first of all, I'd like to share one of my personal heroes. This has to do with preparation and planning. If you had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 6 sharpening my axe. It's a very, very good rubric for preparing for anything substantive or important. And along those lines, what do we want to prepare? We need, number one, what's the objective of our call going to be? It's not just to give a demo, but we need to achieve a desired objective, hopefully, as well as what the customer's objective is. We want to talk through the rest of the items that you see here and put together a plan. Now, with respect to organizations that say, just show me a demo, or even worse, a salesperson says, just show them a demo, I want to introduce 2 brief ideas. One is called the menu approach. which is described more fully in an article on our website. We'll list that out in a moment. The menu approach is a very, very easy way to introduce at a high level a range of things that your organization can do for the customer and invite the customer to choose which of those items is most interesting or useful to them. That's the menu approach, and it's a delightful way to begin to engage your customer, followed by something known as a vision generation demo, which is, and I hope you guys are all sitting down for this, think in terms of 2 to 4 minutes of demo. That's it. Just enough for the customer to say, oh, I could see where this could go, and more importantly, to open the customer up to a discovery conversation. To a certain degree, it's a flip on demo on the fly, if you will, but it is a very specific process to move the customer from, if you will, show me a demo to being willing and engaged in a discovery conversation. Moving on from that, how many of you have ever heard this, and more importantly, how many of you knew that it was Aristotle who actually wrote this the first time? And then he wrote it, and then he told him what he wrote. What's the answer? How many people were aware of this? Mitch?
Yeah.
Nothing yet.
Nothing
Anybody
yet.
knew when Aristotle lived? I'll give you a hint. It was a sunny day in ancient Greece. I believe it was 2,600 years ago. It's something on that order in any case.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly that. All right, tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them, and tell them what you just told them. Why are we taught to present like that? Because adults learn by repetition. So let's peel this apart a little bit further. This is a traditional demo, a traditional overview demo. You've got 60 minutes, and what most people traditionally do is try to pack as much features, functions, and fun into that 60 minutes as possible. And they'll start off a session by saying, stop me if you have any questions. I want this to be interactive. Well, what actually typically happens is they don't want questions because they won't get through everything in the allotted time. So what we want to do is move from what is perceived by customers to be basically a fire hose, furiously flinging features and functions frantically at this poor child audience. We want to move from that to breaking things up into chunks, into consumable components that can be discussed, entered, explored in as much depth as the customer has interest, exited with a summary and a pause before going on to that next component. Now, question for the audience, at maximum, how long can an adult human pay attention? Let's see how many minutes or hours can an adult human pay attention? See what they come up with. Mitch, what are we getting?
See, we have 8 minutes, 3 minutes, 7,
8 minutes.
3, 4. Yeah.
So whoever picked 8, that's closest. John Medina, in his fabulous book Brain Rules, found that the actual maximum is about 10 minutes. Very frankly, that is way too long. But if you've been talking for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 minutes, that's way too long without a break. But that's the maximum amount that you could possibly expect an audience member to pay attention. So if you've got an hour-long demo, at minimum, you should have, everybody do the math, how many chunks at minimum? Somebody type into your chat dialog box.
Here we go. Nice. 6.
Well, well done. I was fully expecting some people to do something like, 5.9, whatever. What does this mean? This means that you've got an opportunity here for some real team play. So you see the initial intro on the far left here. That should be done by the salesperson. As you go into a chunk, this is where Aristotle's commentary becomes particularly valid. The pre-salesperson should do the intro, should describe the capabilities, the functions, the value, and then do a summary as he or she goes out of that chunk. Take a breath, a pause, and then repeat. The final summary in the far right here should be done by whom? That's right, everybody type in salesperson. What does that mean? There's a subtlety. That means that the salesperson has to be doing what throughout this demo? Somebody type in the phrase paying attention. That's exactly that. Further, this structure provides a specific and structured opportunity for the audience to do what in between each of these chunks? Everybody type ask questions. So instead of the bland, stop me if you have any questions along the way, you actually structure it so that people know that there is their opportunity to ask questions, offer commentary, and so forth. Who should keep track of questions that need to be parked along the way? Well, that would be the salesperson. We'll talk about that in a moment here. So when you're doing traditional demos, this is what we typically hear. The vendor, blah, 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 blah. Any questions so far? And what's the typical answer? Nope, we're good. Or any questions so far, and you have a big group, what you often hear is, and yes, I'm doing that, crickets in an empty room. So as I was mentioning earlier, what you really want to be striving for is 76 seconds. This is what you're looking at here is the study from Gong from a few years ago. The salesperson up on top in blue. This is the salesperson talking, the prospect down in orange in the bottom. Hypothetical call here. But what you want are the speaker switches going back and forth on average every 76 seconds. So that's where that comes from. All right, one or two more ideas, and then I get to turn this over to the fine folks, Larson and Mitch. Managing questions, and Larson's actually going to demo this, I believe, using Demoflow. Managing questions, the elegant way to manage questions is to have a parking lot, a dedicated location. So on the left of this image, you can see examples of parking that was not done well, intriguing, but not done well, versus having a structured approach for capturing and cataloging questions so they don't get lost. And one of the delightful things about Demoflow is it actually has a native capability to do this, which we'll take a look at in a moment. Finally, before we do a summary and wrap up on this, I want to talk briefly about rescues. How many of you have ever been doing a demo and all of a sudden something went wrong? The software crashed, a capability wasn't working properly. Let's see what people are writing in the chat box. Has anybody had a disaster like this?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
The answer's good. Oh, yeah. So two recommendations. Number one, don't thrash. If you're the pre-sales person and you've just had a problem with your software, there's a magic button in Zoom and WebEx and the other tools. Does anybody know what it is that you should use? Type it in if you know what it is.
Pause.
Pause.
Stop sharing. Pause.
Stop sharing, yeah. Pause is what I recommend. Pause your screen. It freezes what the audience sees, and you can do anything you want to on your side. The audience has no clue what you're doing. So as you're getting your software back or whatever needs to be done, what should your sales counterpart be doing? Well, he or she or it should be doing a rescue. That means he should be guiding attention away from the scene of the disaster. He may need to gently remind us in pre-sales to actually pause the screen. That can often happen. He may want to or she may want to start working down the list of questions or even simply call a brief break. This is a rescue, and it is the responsibility of the salesperson to help rescue the pre-sales person. Very professional, very elegant. So to sum up my portion here, here's a very simple list of the things that we should be doing in the course of a demo. Listed in green here are the responsibilities, if you will, of the person who should take the lead for this component. So as you can see, sales has a large number of responsibilities. It's not just, here's my demo monkey, go nuts, and at the end, so wasn't that great? But this needs to be an integrated approach. What we've suggested is a terrific way to drive that integration is through introductions, summaries, pauses, managing questions, managing rescues, and related. So that's my portion of things. I hope you found this useful. I do want to share where some of the materials are that we just referenced. You can see on this slide There's our Great Demo website. We've got links to the articles that are mentioned here. There's a Great Demo LinkedIn group if you're not already a member. I invite you to join. And then, of course, we could recommend a couple of books. I referenced Brain Rules by John Medina, really a terrific operating manual for your brain. And then there's a little tome called Great Demo, and I know the author personally. So, folks, I hope you found this useful. We've been queuing up questions. Let me turn this over to Mitch and Larson. Well done, folks.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
And just to kind of pull in here, if you wanted to go Amazon, we'll send off all these links after the fact here. So Brain Rules, you can find that on Amazon. And of course, one of the best books ever written, Great Demo here. So you'll have the in hyperlinks after the fact, in addition to the recording. We'll send this all off to you after the fact.
Holy cow, 126 ratings? Wow.
All right, it's pretty good. Pretty good. I like that.
Oh, thanks, Michael.
Nice. Cool. And I think, Peter, before we move on to my portion here, I think there's one thing, we had one question from the audience before we kind of, talk a little bit about team selling. One question kind of came up here, and it was, what to do if your customer talks too much, asks too many questions, out of topic, or tries to hijack your call here. So do you have any tips or tricks? I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about what I just did right here, but do you have any tips or tricks or suggestions around this comment or question?
So this is a topic that deserves more development. And given our limited time in this webinar, what I'd like to do, Larson, is ask if you could just capture this in Demoflow.
Yeah.
The topic would be managing questions and time. So go ahead and capture that. And actually, if you capture that so people can see it, it's there. Yep, managing questions and time. Perfect. And what we'll plan to do is return to this either a little bit later in our cast here today, or we'll address it later on. Now, actually, what I just did is exactly what I'm recommending as a solution, to gently but firmly park questions that you want to defer until later. And what the method I just did is exactly what we teach in Great Demo workshops. And one of the delightful things you'll see about Demoflow is how you can actually do this interactively using the tool itself. On the website is an article, I believe, called Stunningly Awful Demos Lost in the Weeds, which is all about managing questions and time. Stunningly Awful Demos Lost in the Weeds. So there you go. So I hope that helps for now.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like about this too, Peter, is you address the question and say, hey, I'm going to bring this back up when the time is appropriate. Allows you to maintain control of the conversation, but make people feel like they were heard there. So, and then in the same vein, Sharon, I see your comment here around, how do we get alignment with the sales team around chunking out a presentation or demo? I can walk through a few things on how kind of we do it here at Demoflow, but then also guidelines around how to really make that a possibility here and introduce opportunity to ask strategic questions and create that alignment between sales there. But we'll walk through all that here in just a moment. Cool. Peter, any other remarks from your end, or are we kind of good to move forward here?
Good to move forward. And thanks, Dan, for posting it in chat.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate those comments there. And really, the point of my portion here today is, yes, I want to talk to you a little bit about Demoflow, but I want to keep it very specific to team selling and some of our functionality. And really, how do we, take a lot of the concepts that Peter talked about, and how does our tool make that a really easy process that you can follow consistently across all the presentations that you might be doing? So we'll be walking through a bit of our platform here today, but really relating it back to a lot of the concepts that Peter talked about. But just to kind of give a brief introduction on Demoflow. So again, my name is Larson Stair. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Demoflow. I came from pre-sales. So I was in the enterprise pre-sales department. I've been a full cycle account executive. So doing demos on the fly, being a demo monkey without discovery, very, very familiar to me. And really a lot of what we're seeing manifest in our tool here is a result of that. So what Demoflow is a tool that helps both pre-sales and sales professionals run better presentations and better software demos sitting from their house. And specifically, what we've built and the foundation of this is collaboration. Is how do we make it really, really easy for pre-sales professional and your sales counterpart to come into a call and have really good preparation, have good alignment going into that discussion, and then tell a great story behind that, and then making sure that we're doing this consistently and often. So really, what our solution really provides is, it gives you a tool to tell a better story and do so in a concise fashion. But the point that I really want to focus on here today is collaboration. How do we make team selling a reality and a consistent reality and make this a really flawless and smooth process? And then really helping you identify and scaling what actually works throughout the organization. But specific to the collaboration side of things, so these are kind of the four main principles that I want to walk through here today. So first, in relation to Peter's discussion around preparation, right? We don't want to go into calls ad hoc and just kind of wing it. That's a recipe for disaster there. So how does our tool help you and a counterpart prepare for a call, create good alignment there? And Sharon, to your point around chunking out a demo or presentation, we'll show you a bit around how that can work here. Second piece is co-driving. So you may or may not have really realized this, but we're actually running, all three of us, Mitch and Peter and myself, are running the call today in the product, in Demoflow. And there's no switching off screen shares. There's no Peter, next slide, please, or anything like that. And I'll show you specifically how this is all manifested and made this a possibility. We'll finish up talking a little bit about questions parking lot in relation to maintaining that control of the conversation and Alex's comment there. And then the kind of where all demos should be kind of finalizing is next steps. How do we maintain momentum and make sure we have a flawless pass off back to the sales counterparts here? So any initial questions in the chat right here so far, or comments from Mitch or Peter before we kind of dig into the meeting prep side of the equation?
I would offer one thing, and that is, to a certain degree, I'm modeling what the salesperson would potentially do. From the standpoint that this is my second time, I think that's accurate, this is my second time using Demoflow, and I'm already fairly comfortable with it. So learning curve, pretty rapid.
Yeah, pretty quick, yeah. It's a pretty simple, straightforward tool. That's exactly right. And it's on purpose. We want to make sure it's really easy for people to come in. This can be a nerve-wracking experience for people when they're presenting. And so let's make it as easy to use as possible. Cool. Well, where we're going to start first is this pre-meeting prep and kind of how do we create alignment there. We all did this as panelists before the call here today. We prepped for it on Friday. We got together, reviewed all of our materials, but I'll show you specifically in this presentation. So as I go into kind of our content creator, we're brought into this screen. This is the actual demo that we're in right now that we prepared for on Friday. And there's a lot that we're looking at right here, but a few things that I want to draw your attention to. So just general lay of the land, left-hand rail. This is your accounts panel right here. You can see here are all my co-presenters. So I can come in, see notes that Mitch has taken, Peter has taken, or myself. And this can be in preparation for the call. I can reference Salesforce notes, any other CRM documentation, pull that in, make sure I have all my notes for great discovery that was done, hopefully, on that first before we're jumping into a live presentation. So I can have all that right here at my disposal. But specifically, and Sharon, to your comment around chunking out a demo or presentations, that is one concept that our platform was really built on, is we can have team or private a library of assets here, but I can literally break out these different presentations into chunks. They can be individual slides, they can be slides in browsers, they can be demoing just one feature, or it can be an entire presentation. And so what this allows me to do is say, you know what, I want to bring in a specific slide right here at this section right here, maybe pull in some additional browsers right here on the left-hand rail. But this just allows me to chunk it out a little bit, and we can discuss on the front half, who is taking which slides? What is the goal going into this discussion here? And even go as far as just to break out the slides and go into specific talk tracks or speaker notes here that we want to be bringing in and when walking through. So this makes it really easy to prepare for that call and make sure you have alignment before you go into that discussion. Peter, anything to add on the preparation side of the equation? Anything I missed here? And then, of course, Mitch as well.
So one question would be, where would people be able to see their discovery information, assuming they've done a good job and they've collected all those notes? Would that appear in the notes portion, or yeah?
Yeah, so it could appear in the notes section, so you can pull those in. This can be stuff that is prepared ahead of time. or when I have this linked up to a CRM, I can pull in, a custom opportunity or account information. So if the account executive did good discovery, they have notes in there, maybe a qualification call, that'll all be documented, and you can pull that and reference that live before or during the call.
Terrific.
Excellent. Cool. Mitch, anything else to add here? Or one last thing, actually, I'll point out is around, Peter, I know we've talked about this, is around check URLs, right? How do you make sure that you're presenting, the URLs are prepped, ready to go? So I'm in a web client right now, but basically in the desktop experience, it allows me to navigate to the correct spot and make sure that my URLs are preloaded, ready to go. I'm at the right spot, and we can just kind of move forward. We're not waiting for any loading screens, and we kind of know who exactly is presenting which portions of this. So this allows me to make sure that we're truly are ready to go into the next portion.
Yeah, I think what I would say, just to add on, Larson, before you move forward, is coming from a customer success standpoint. I know that not only, within kind of a sales use case, but really as far as onboarding goes. And I know particularly when you and myself work together in kind of a sales to service handoff, it's extremely amazing to come in here and really quickly collaboratively put together the sales pieces and the onboarding, the CSM pieces together, and then present together in real time as you're kind of handing off to me too. So just encouraging people to kind of think down funnel there, not just in the typical demo, but actually handing off, or even folks on the call that might be in a similar position as myself as a CSM.
Certainly, that's a great point. Yeah, and making sure there's, team selling isn't just, pre-sales and sales. You can do sales and SDRs. It could be sales teams and leadership, or trainers, or additional people. There's a lot of different applications for when it's appropriate to bring in other pre-sales professionals or other professionals there. Yeah. So just a few questions here, before we kind of jump onto the next portion. So basically what was kind of articulated here is in Demoflow, what was the link to Salesforce? So basically how the Salesforce integration works is you can pull in objects like leads, accounts, or opportunities in all of the custom fields that relate to those objects. So your next step field, discovery notes, the amount, the actual close date, or in pre-sales specifically, there can be specific demo note sections that are in relation to what your notes are from that call, is what we've heard. So that's another area that you could pull in recent information and push out any changes. And Ellie, yes, would notes taken here in the platform be pushed back to Salesforce? That is correct. So that's exactly what happens. So you can document all those things that are happening, whether they're demo notes or any of those fields, and put them right into the appropriate field. So you can, which will push out basically instantly. Good questions. Cool. What I'd like to do next is talk about how we're doing all this right now. So the actual live presentation. So like I mentioned, the three of us are all in a Demoflow instance right now. We have been advancing slides. There's no pass off of screen share, and it just allows for a really smooth and easy kind of collaborative presentation here. So what I like to do at this section is kind of, I'm going to back out and show you what's on my side of the equation versus what's on your side of the equation. You're all seeing what I want you to see, but if I share my whole desktop here, this is kind of what I see. So we have this main presentation window right here, but again, I can reference all the notes that myself or my co-presenters have been taking throughout the call. So if I'm staying focused on all of you, and I have a great account executive, Mitch, on my end of the equation, who's taking diligent notes for me, that can all be behind the scenes here, and he can help me kind of document things that might be missed. Really, I think, what we're going to do is a little magic trick here. I like to do this. So I'm going to take a step back, and Mitch, I'm going to have you go ahead and advance us to the next slide for me real quick. And then go ahead and move me back to the previous slide that we were just at. Excellent. Cool.
There you go.
So these pass-offs happen all the time, whether it's, a sales rep that is queuing up a call, passing it over to technical presenters, and then to finish with account executives, or maybe for some account executives who are a little bit more involved, a little bit more tech savvy. They want to actually participate in the live presentations. And so really gone are the days of, Mitch, next slide, please, next slide, please. We can all advance our slides independently of each other, but we're all looking at the same exact screen. So we're taking away a lot of that guesswork or fumbly behaviors that can happen as we're presenting, and as team presenting typically can do, and make sure that we have these flawless kind of pass-offs as we're moving throughout our call. I think the other portion too is, before we kind of move on, is, conversations aren't really linear. A lot of times there are questions, tangents, things that happen throughout the call. And, sometimes, this kind of parking lot that Peter and I were talking about, which we'll see, we're documenting all of this right here. So we have a great parking lot in this spot, but sometimes you actually want to make a tangent. Sometimes it might be appropriate in the flow of your conversation. Why don't we go ahead and I'll ask everybody, how many times have you been prepared for a call going into it, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, either that pesky CEO jumps in and derails the whole thing, and you need to make a pivot or a tangent? Go ahead and say, let's type in pivot into the chat box here. If anyone's ever done that, go ahead and put that in there. Excellent. Peter, have you ever had that before?
Just added, yep, you betcha. and I've been the one who drove it too.
Me too, right? Yeah. And so these can be quite challenging situations. And really, to Peter's point, one option certainly is to pause screen, find whatever you need to find, pull that up. What's bad is to fumble around, search through files, folders, and just while they're waiting, and just, please hold on a second, and they're just watching you pivot and make all these tangents and to change the conversation here. So that is one thing that we really try to be very conscious of, is how do we make that possible, is flip to a different presentation or a different kind of talk track. And so either myself or a co-presenter can actually add in content dynamically for me. So right here within the platform, if I needed to, let's just pull in a browser here. Let's pull in, we talked about vision generation demos earlier today. So let's pull in a blog post from Peter here. And basically we can pivot right to that and talk a little bit about how we can, create some vision generation demos. So we can pivot to browsers, we can pivot to slide decks, really anything that might be relevant. You have a whole library here at your disposal, which will allow you to make quick and easy pivots or tangents.
And I'd like to add, I'm going to pile on, which I'm not supposed to do, but I would like to add that this ability to pivot, one of the best times to use this kind of capability, when you're in a demo and the customer is now saying, I get it, I like it, I'm good. The customer effectively has indicated that they're comfortable with what you've shown. The next step should be to start talking about implementation timelines, and what is known as transition vision. This is the perfect time to take advantage of Demoflow capabilities and have those materials ready to go. And you can literally say, so dear customer, shall we talk about what it will take and how to move you from your current painful bleeding state through go live all the way to the point in time you're actually beginning to get value out of the offering. Customer says, yeah, that's a terrific idea. Slide over, grab that timeline slide or whatever you use to actually drive that conversation. Seamless, it's a thing of beauty.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And to that same point, Peter, is, maybe you already had that prepped, or maybe you need to pull that in. So yes, you could pull that in, really quickly here. And to Max's questions, are they preset, or do they need to be customized before every demo? They can be both, really. You can preset them and have standard pivots that you typically make around onboarding, pricing, integrations, a whole slew of different things. Or it can be more customized and on the fly. That's very specific to that customer. And to what I'm getting at here is sometimes you can pivot and that's necessary. Other times, because this is all your prospect is seeing here, your audience member, you can just jump to the next portion here. There's no fumbling through slides. Maybe you need to go back and re-explain something, or maybe you just say, you know what, we're kind of done here. Let's talk about next steps and closing motions. And all the audience is going to see is this main window right here. So it maintains that discretion And meanwhile, your audience is like, man, this guy is so prepared. It's just like every slide is the next slide. It answers all my next questions. And it's like, it leaves a really good impression on that audience. Cool. So we talked a little bit about kind of is there a place to show your screen, or is it all screenshots? No. So these are all live browsers. So this can be a logged in platform state. It can be your actual demo platform that you need to present, which is one of the unique parts about what we do, is we can actually include live browsers directly into our slide decks, pull those in ad hoc, or pivot to any explainer slides or jump into the actual platform there. Cool. So the last two pieces here before we kind of leave some spots for Q&A here is we've been kind of demoing it throughout the time here, is the question parking lot. As we've been fielding some of these questions from chat, they keep arising, and basically what we've been doing is putting them right here in this little parking lot right here. And again, to Peter's point, is what this allows us to do is either type it on screen and say, hey, thank you, Alex, thank you, Sharon, thank you, Scott, for those questions, and Monica. We're going to get to those when the time is right, and allows you to have visual consensus that I am taking you seriously. I'm going to write this down. I'm actually going to get back to you. And, should we not know the answer to this, it makes it really easy to send this off to a prospect and make sure that, hey, I'm getting back to you on this. I didn't answer it on the call. I know you were curious about our integrations there. It's a little bit above my pay grade. I need to go chat with our engineering team. Let me get back to you there. So it just gives some confidence around that. And to that point, so let's see here. Can content be grouped or categorized into different buckets to quickly find and make? Yep, so that's exactly right. So that is exactly within our capabilities. Is, if it takes you a long time to kind of find all that information, we have it grouped and bucketed. So it could be customer testimonials that are specific. It could be a whole slew of different things that you might need to find quickly and easily. And what we'll kind of wrap up here with and kind of finalize, not coincidentally, is talking about next steps. So a lot of times throughout a discussion, similar to questions are more for our audience. Let's make them feel heard. Let's make sure that we really address all the things that they have that are top of their mind. Next steps are to the advantage and our advantage as the presenter. We want to make sure that as things come up throughout the call, that we're documenting them, and that we have a really good understanding of what needs to get done to get a deal finished. Really, really common in enterprise selling, where we have to mutual action plans, joint execution plans, they're everywhere. And it really is a way to gain that, again, consensus on the plan moving forward. So as a great account executive should be doing on every single call, while me as maybe the pre-sales professional is doing my presentation and demo here, is, someone like Mitch could be coming in and saying next steps. We might need to say, we need to send off, send over a recording and Peter's hyperlinks, right? We'll get that sent off to everybody. I will take the lead on that, and I'll get that all to you all by end of day tomorrow, and make sure that you all have that information at your disposal. And this can pertain to the sales cycle in particular. So this could be, we need to do a second demo with leadership. Then we need to go into some sort of procurement. So we need security documentation and legal review. And that's going to take, a couple weeks there. And so what this lands at is now you get the opportunity to actually forecast your deals with accuracy and have a really detailed understanding of what is the plan moving forward. And so as our reps should be doing is at the end of every call, we have this summary slide where we can say, hey, did we answer all the questions that came up if necessary? And what are our steps moving forward? This is the perfect segue back to the account executive and say, hey, I'm all done here, pre-sales professional. I did my piece. Looks like we have some next steps here. I'm going to pass it off to, X person to kind of walk us through next steps and talk about a plan moving forward. So this could be reviewing all those next steps. And I promise you, every single time I do this, these next steps change. They add in more. They change the date. Things evolve and change. And it's a really great point to build that consensus moving forward. And even go as far to say, let's schedule the date and time of follow-up. Let's grab some time here on my calendar, look at, maybe the 3rd or 4th. It'll pull availabilities. Anyone who's in international time zones, we'll make sure we got you there. We can send off that meeting invite right here on the call so we don't lose that momentum.
Everybody's in an international time zone.
That's fair.
By definition.
By definition, absolutely. So that's a bit on, so we talked on the question side of things, next steps, and how do we wrap up a call collaboratively. So I hope that we've had a, kind of a good depiction here of really, really where we can help out is pre-meeting prep, making sure that you have consensus going into the call. They're broken up into chunks. You and your co-presenters are in a really good spot going into that. Making sure that you can actually co-drive. We have flawless pass-offs. We're not fumbling or telling, oh, Peter, next slide, please. Peter, next slide. And then you have a great spot for question parking lot and to maintain the momentum moving forward so you can document those next steps and create an assignee there. So just a few ways that we can help to make some of these team selling motions a really easy process that you can follow every single time. That to say, questions about anything that I've showed you here today, how it relates to any content that Peter talked about, or anything else here as we have a few more minutes to wrap up.
So Sharon had posed the question, how can we get the salesperson to really understand the demo chunks? We're always asked to demo too much in a meeting and they don't get it. Two approaches. One, severe and frequent beatings, I think is one approach. No, obviously not. I think a lot of analogies will help. I don't know why traditionally demos have been delivered as a fire hose. There's nothing, first of all, there's nothing religious about the length of time of 1 hour. Demos should be as short or long as is needed in accord with the customer interest. But if you begin to look at the world around you, you can find some interesting and easy analogies that you could potentially share with a sales colleague to begin to get them to understand the ideas of chunking. Number one, I don't think I've ever seen anybody eat a loaf of bread in a single bite. So how do you eat a loaf of bread? Well, you slice it or you rip off sections, you break it up into chunks because that's the only way that you can consume it because our mouths are only this big. A great example, is anybody, let's see, anybody from the UK? Yeah, I don't know if who was the person that was from the UK that was on earlier? Well, it doesn't matter. UK telephone numbers are amongst the longest on Earth. I don't know if it's because they just wanted to challenge everybody, but here's the interesting thing. If you simply read a telephone number as a linear phrase, that's right, me. That's right, if Matt was saying. If you read it as a linear phrase without any breaks, what happens on the recipient side? The recipient says, wait, I didn't get that. And so what happens is we repeat it, often with a sigh. So if Matt said it's +4 406 218 5711 64243, nobody in the audience got that, perhaps even with the recording. On the other hand, if you break it up into chunks, you say +44 0 163 284 142, strangely enough, the ability to retain that information is dramatically improved. This is part of what's described in John Medina's book, but very frankly, it's just pragmatic. So Sharon, I hope that begins to help.
Yeah, and Peter, to loop off that point too is, it's a good way of putting it in the eyes of the customer, right? Like, how do they digest information? How do they learn? You could also consider thinking, Sharon, like, how do you frame it in a way that is it advantageous to your account executive? Hey, we're going to break this out into chunks and we're going to ask strategic questions at each breaking point. And this could be a great point for you to get involved. And that's the whole point. We got to continue to do discovery here, right? Like, we want to understand X, Y, and Z things. So in the preparation for your meetings, you can actually interject strategic questions in there. And maybe if they're good account executive, they could ask those questions, could inspire good back and forth and make sure you're hitting that, what was it, 76 seconds or so?
76.
Of that back and forth time.
By the way, Matt had the delightful analogy of how do we eat an elephant, and I used to use that analogy until an elephant pointed out that he didn't really like the analogy, so I stopped.
Excellent.
There was a couple of questions.
Oh.
there's a few more questions I don't think that we addressed. Just a few more around Demoflow, Larson.
Yeah.
I think those last two there around Demoflow presentations being saved and retained, and then around CRM integration.
Yeah, so each Demoflow presentation is saved and retained, and it can be viewed by yourself in hindsight or any of your team members or colleagues. So Mitch and I have done hundreds of demos together now. We can go back and we can each glean insight into what we have both collaborated on, or really any of our other team members too. So we can go in view only mode and see best practices and see what has worked for other people. So yes, absolutely. And yes, Demoflow integrates with CRM. So right now we integrate with Salesforce, and we are working on soon thereafter, like a HubSpot, Trigger CRM, and a few others that are top of mind for us.
Right.
Excellent. Well, I guess in kind of follow up here, guys, thank you everybody for the call here today. Any other closing remarks from Peter or Mitch?
Delightful to have this audience and work with you guys. I hope you found this useful. And in fact, if you did and you'd like to have future sessions, we'd be interested to see what topics you might desire to have or have in mind. So thanks all very much.